let's talk meals. I feel like we're either sacrificing convenience or money when it comes to preparing our meals for our families. I'm always on the lookout for a meal that doesn't have me slaving over the stove for hours and that I don't also have to spend a fortune to make. In this video, I share 5 easy and simple meals that you could make for your family while also not breaking the bank. If you're new here, hi, I'm Samantha, creator of the Frugal Mom Life, where I share money-saving frugal tips that have helped my family of 5 live a more meaningful and happier life. The first meal is spaghetti. Now, it's no secret that noodles and pasta and stuff like that, spaghetti and goulash, are one of the cheapest meals that you can make. And I've included it here because it is one of the cheapest, as well as just a reminder that it is available when you are on a tight budget. While this is one of the simpler meals, I did include some variety of meals as well in the other meals so that you aren't eating the same thing over and over, so that your family doesn't get bored of the meals you're making them. For the spaghetti, you will need the pasta noodles, the pasta sauce, and half of the ground turkey here. For the spaghetti, I did take half of that turkey burger and added some oil to the pan. And I went ahead and fried that turkey burger right up in the pan. You will see me add a few seasonings there. The seasonings that I add are just ones that I usually add that I have in my pantry. They are onion powder, garlic powder, and then a little pinch of salt there. And then once I have that turkey burger all browned up, I had some water boiling on the stove. I add a little bit of oil and salt to that and add the noodles once that water is boiling. Now, don't feel restricted to just spaghetti here. You can get any kind of noodles. I just chose the spaghetti noodles because that's one of the kids' favorites. And you will want to let those noodles cook according to the instructions. And then once they are done, you will go ahead and I did go ahead and strain those noodles. And then I started adding everything to the pan. I used that can of Hunt spaghetti sauce and then the ground turkey that I had already browned. I added all of that to the pot there and then just gave it a good little stir. And I did go ahead and plate this up into a nice little serving there. This did make quite a bit of spaghetti. We all ended up eating it for dinner, and then we also did have quite a bit of leftovers that my husband ended up taking the following day for lunch at his work. Spaghetti is always one of our go-tos. It's one that we know that the kids will always eat, so it's on rotation quite often in our house. Now for this meal, I did also make some garlic toast to eat with it because I had forgotten that I had planned on using the bread for another recipe later on in the week. So I did have to go out and buy another loaf of bread. So if you're looking to just use the one loaf of bread, then you will just want to make this spaghetti to eat without the garlic toast. And then the next recipe would be burritos. This is another very filling and satisfying meal. I feel like beans just have a satiety effect. I think that's how you say it, where they just leave you feeling so satisfied and filled after you eat them. Maybe it's the fiber in them, whatever it is. I just love the filling effect that they have when you're on such a tight budget. For the burritos recipe, I'm using the other half of the ground turkey, some mild cheddar cheese, sweet corn, taco seasoning, flour tortillas, and black beans. To make the burritos, I started by just making the black beans in my Instant Pot. I added 8 cups of water to those black beans into the Instant Pot. And then I ended up cooking them for 22 minutes in there. And after I got them started, I went ahead and started browning the rest of the ground turkey that I had left over. And then once those black beans were done cooking in the Instapot, I did go ahead and drain and rinse those. And then I finished up with the turkey burger by adding a little bit of water, some of the beans, half a thing of that frozen corn, and the taco seasoning there. And this actually ended up to be quite a bit of food that I was trying to smush into this pan. It kept trying to flop out onto the stovetop while I was trying to mix it. So it did take quite a bit of time for me to go ahead and mix that all together. And I will add that if you don't have an Instapot, you will just need to soak those beans overnight and then cook them on low the following morning. This recipe made so much food. It fed my family of 5 for dinner, as well as allowing us to have a leftover meal that my husband took to work the next day. The second meal that I made for my family was rice and beans. I feel like we all have that one struggle meal that we could eat over and over again and never get tired of it. This is that struggle meal for me. I just love the combination of the rice and the beans and the corn with just a little dab of butter. I will say that I usually eat this with canned corn. I feel like the canned corn does have a little more flavor and crunchiness over the frozen corn. So that is an option as well. If you prefer the taste of the canned vegetables, then go ahead and go for that. I also do recommend adding a dab of butter to this meal. It just adds a little bit of creaminess. This is another meal that we usually have on rotation, and it's usually one that we usually meal prep ahead of time so that we can have it for lunch for a couple days. To make it a little more easier, and what I usually do if I'm crunched on time is I will get a can of beans and use that, as well as a can of corn. And then all I really have to cook is the rice. For the rice and beans, I'll be using half of each of these items: the sweet corn, some brown rice, and black beans. So to make the rice and beans, I started off by putting the rice into the Instapot to cook it that way. The rice measured out to be about 2.5 cups. So I went ahead and added about 4 cups of water to that. Now I know the instructions said to add about twice the amount of water as you had rice, but I know that not as much water is evaporated with the Instapot, and that's why I chose to go with the 4 cups of water versus the 2.5 cups of rice. And it all worked out because once it was done, it did have a nice texture to it. And then I grabbed those beans that I had cooked the night before and put them right on top of the rice there for a serving. And here you will see me pull out the other half of that frozen sweet corn. I do put it in a bowl to show you how much is left over there so that you can see how much I have. And it was easier that way once I had it in the bowl to give me an idea of how much I could put per serving. So I did just add a few tablespoons of corn and then just a dab of butter. And as you see here, I did end up with a good amount of meals. I ended up with 4 servings of this beans and rice. This year, one of the meals that we've added into our rotation that we have at least once a week is breakfast for dinner. And we have this in a different variety of ways. Sometimes it's waffles or pancakes, or sometimes it's just toast. There's so many items you can have when you have breakfast for dinner. And it's also one of the cheaper meals that you can make. The prices of eggs is continually going down. So you could have something as simple as eggs and toast, which is just bare minimum, or you can add a meat to that or switch out the toast for a different carb. And let me just tell you, the kids have really been loving this added to the meal plan. It was one that they always looked forward to it when they came home after school. They would just get so excited when they asked what's for dinner, and I would tell them, oh, we're having breakfast for dinner. To make the breakfast for dinner, I used 8 of the eggs, half of the loaf of bread, and half of a premium sausage. For the breakfast for dinner, I went ahead and started with half a thing of that sausage, and I made it into patties. And then I added the patties to a heated skillet on the stove, and I just fried them up, turning them halfway. I was actually quite surprised by how many patties I had gotten from this half a sausage. I ended up getting 8 sausage patties, which was perfect because then we each got 2. My youngest actually doesn't eat all that much, so sometimes I'll just share mine with her, and that's what I did when we ate this. I gave her one of my sausages, and that was plenty for the both of us because we also had the eggs and toast as well. Now, I did put these sausages on paper towel once they were done cooking to get the excess grease off, and then I ended up cracking 8 eggs into a bowl to scramble. I figured that would give us each 2 per serving, and that should be enough to satisfy us. And it actually ended up working out perfect because I had used 4 eggs for the fried rice recipe, and then I used the 8 eggs here for the breakfast for dinner. So I went ahead and scrambled those eggs, and as you can see here, the eggs with the 2 pieces of sausage and 2 slices of toast that I did butter, it actually ended up being quite a bit of food and satisfied us all. Another meal that I've made for my family that I've included in this video is fried rice. And this is also a filling and satisfying meal, and it may be one of the healthiest so far. It does have that brown rice, so you get the healthy carbs as well as the vegetables, and then the eggs for the protein. And this truly ended up to be a lot of food in the end as well. We ended up eating it for dinner for my family of 5, and my husband also had leftovers for a meal that he could take for lunch to work the next day. If you wanted to make this a little cheaper, you probably don't even need that smoked sausage because we do have those 4 eggs in there to add a little bit of protein. And there's already some protein in the brown rice as well. For the fried rice, I will be using the items of mixed vegetables, the rest of the brown rice, smoked sausage, and 4 of the eggs. And here I am making the fried rice. To start with that, I just started with some peppers and onions that I just pulled out of my freezer. And once that was warmed up and the pan was warm, I did go ahead and add some vegetables. And I had scrambled 4 of those eggs that I just dumped in there once those vegetables were heated through. Now, I'm not the best at cooking on a cast iron skillet. I've learned that the secret is to make sure that the pan is heated, and you don't want to touch those eggs too much until they start to cook. And as long as you have enough oil on the bottom of that pan, those eggs shouldn't stick very much at all. I did have that smoked sausage that I added as well. I just cut that up and then added it once those eggs were fully cooked. And once I did get that smoked sausage added in, I realized that my cast iron skillet was not big enough, so I had to transfer it to my bigger pan. Once that was done and I was sure that it was all heated through, I added the rice and heated that along with it. So I just continued to heat it through, scraping the bottom to get it unstuck. And as you can see here, this did make quite a bit of food, and it was so delicious and so filling. I did end up adding some cumin, hot sauce, and soy sauce to this. So feel free to add in whatever seasonings or spices that you have on hand that your family likes. So they are the 5 meals that I did make for my family. It was the spaghetti, the rice and beans, the burritos, the fried rice, and the breakfast for dinner. I was also able to get 2 extra meals out of this. One of them was a sausage and gravy meal. I had reserved half of the sausage from the breakfast for dinner meal, and I cooked that up and I used to make sausage gravy. For the sausage gravy, you can go ahead and use the other half of that loaf of bread and the other half of what's left of the premium sausage roll. And then I went ahead and started on the sausage gravy. For this, I just ended up cooking the rest of that sausage that I had left over after making the breakfast for dinner. And I did reserve some of that sausage for another recipe, which still left me with quite a bit of sausage to work with in the pan. And you will see me, I do add some flour to that, and then I try to get the flour worked through the sausage. And then I do add about 3/4 of a cup of milk, and I water that down with 3/4 cup of water. Now, if you don't have milk on hand or you're running low this week, then you can definitely just use the water instead of the milk. I just feel like the milk added a little bit of creaminess, and that's why I chose to do this. And then I just cook it, stirring routinely as it thickened. It will thicken, but it does take some time. I did add some black pepper to this, and I believe I also added some salt for some flavor. Now, the 3/4 cup of milk and water ended up not being quite as much as I would have liked. If I had done it over, I would have made it 1 cup of each. And while this meal wasn't quite as filling as the others had been, this would be a good meal to use as like a small breakfast. The next meal or recipe that I included in this as the bonus recipe, and that is pizza tortillas. These don't really fill you up as much as some of the other meals. You could always add a side to it, like a vegetable, to help that filling effect, but they're always a big hit. Well, this isn't how I usually make them. I do like to add lentils and make like a lentil sauce to put on my pizza tortillas, because then I feel like I'm getting a little extra protein. This is still a good meal, especially on those days where you want to make a little treat for your family. Maybe you want to have like a pizza, but you don't want to go out and order pizza. You could make this instead. And this is one you could also add in whatever you have on hand. I just used the extra sausage that I had reserved because you really just need a little bit of meat for this recipe. And really, you could just reserve some of the sauce from the spaghetti as well and use that. And then this recipe would be pretty much free along with those other meals, especially if you took up some of the cheese from the burritos, because I noticed we had extra cheese from those. I did go ahead and purchase a can of sauce and some mozzarella cheese for this, but I did end up with a lot of extra sauce and some extra cheese that did not get used. For the pizza tortillas, I did purchase a thing of tomato sauce and a mozzarella in addition to just some of the premium sausage that I had left over and the rest of the flour tortillas. This may be the simplest recipe yet, and that is the one of the pizza tortilla. I just warm that tortilla shell up quick in the cast iron skillet and then spread some sauce on top of that tortilla shell. And then I do a layer of cheese and just a little bit of sausage sprinkled in. I did reserve enough sausage to make about the 4 pizza tortillas that I needed, which was perfect. Once I got that sausage On there, I did go ahead and add some more cheese. And at this point, you could just leave it like that and roll it up or just eat it as is. But I chose to do a double tortilla because I still had enough left over. So I spread a little bit more sauce on there. And then I added another tortilla, gave that a quick flip, and then it was good to go. Put it on a plate there, and you see me having a little bit of trouble cutting it. And you see how ooey and gooey this yumminess is. And this is always a great little snack to have, especially when you're having those pizza cravings. This is a great little snack to cure those cravings. Thanks for watching. I hope this video gave you some ideas on affordable meals that you can make for your family. If you did find this video helpful and you got some information from it, or you liked it at all, then please like and subscribe to the video. It helps it reach more people like you.